Hey there, CEOs. Rachel Cook here, founder of the CEO Collective and host of the Promote Yourself to CEO podcast. And today we are talking about burnout. And I know this is a conversation we've had multiple times here on the podcast, but one of my dear friends and clients, Amanda Miller Littlejohn, wrote a book in the last year called The Rest Revolution. This book is one of the best books that I have read that really gets into why and how did we find ourselves as a society at a place where so many of us are depleted, where we're exhausted, where we're burning the candle on both ends. And how do we shift away from that? How do we build more sustainable lives? And the answer isn't about a better productivity system. It's not about time management. It's about really redefining ambition in the post-pandemic era. So Amanda is a sought-after executive coach and brand strategist who has clients all across the globe. She's also become an incredible freelance journalist. She has become the Rosalyn Carter Mental Health Journalism Fellow. Her work has been featured in the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times, Forbes, and even more. And she explores the intersection of mental health challenges and opportunity for high achieving midlife professionals. This conversation was so much fun. It's always fun when I get to catch up with somebody who I've gotten to know over the years, but this book really is, I have to say, hands down, one of my favorite books I've read this year and ever about burnout and our relationship to ambition and achievement. So I highly recommend grabbing this book, and I really hope you love our conversation today. Amanda, I am so excited you are here with me today. We have been trying to get this conversation on the calendar for months now. But when you launched this book, The Rest Revolution, I was just so proud to know you because I was like, I know how awesome you are, and I've seen all the amazing things you've done over the last few years, but I also really, really, really know how much we need this book. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for being persistent about making this interview happen. I'm so glad we're finally sitting down.
Yes. And I think it's just a testament to how life is for so many of us because life is lifing, we have kids, we have businesses, and sometimes you have to be pleasantly persistent to make sure things happen.
Yep.
They're not going to happen immediately, but we made it happen. So
Proud of us.
yes, we did it.
Hardworking mamas out here.
I want to start with the Rest Revolution by having you share a little bit about how did you get to this point of burnout and overwork? Because when you and I got connected, you were very much working on your business, doing the thing, making things happen. And it definitely was not apparent from outward, online social media that you were in pretty severe burnout. Can you share a little bit about your story to burnout and overwork?
The story is so long, and I think, it goes back really far. I think the episode of burnout that I was in and that I kind of chronicle in the book was a recent manifestation of a lifetime of overwork. And like many of the high achievers that I coach, because that's how we connected, I'm a coach as well. I work with high achievers on their personal branding and thought leadership, and more recently, executive coaching and positioning. But all of my clients are people who are go-getters, strivers. They were the straight A students. They're the people who, aren't satisfied with status quo. They want more. They want more visibility, more recognition, more revenue, more income, a higher title, a higher salary. They just want more because they are talented, they're hardworking, and they know that they are capable. And that's how I've identified myself for most of my life as a hard worker, and started in childhood being affirmed for my efforts, for my hard work, for my good grades, for my helpfulness. A lot of the things that we're socialized to do and be as women, to be helpful and to work hard and to be a good girl, but then also that element of the academics. Like I shined in school. I was no athlete, but I could get in.
Same girl, same.
Right. So like that was that was my thing. And that was how I found identity
Yeah.
as a young person, because through both academics and the arts to some degree, because it definitely wasn't sports. And so I just found that that carried over, making
Yeah.
good grades carried over into the workplace. And so I've just been overworking to feel a sense of my own worth and to feel, like I'm doing something my whole life. And I think it all hit ahead during the pandemic when I had my third child
Yeah.
and we were on lockdown and my two older kids were at home doing virtual school. I didn't take a maternity leave. And then my business kind of blew up because everyone was looking for support around personal branding and business.
Yep.
So it was like, oh, let me finally enroll with this coach that I've been watching for years. And so it all came to a head and it was just a recipe for burnout. Now, at the same time, just to give you just a quick aside onto how the book came to be, I'm coaching all these high achievers going through my own burnout, but they're going through burnout too.
Everyone's burned out.
Right. Like we're all burned out. And it's like, that's all we were talking about during our coaching calls. And so one of the topics that I kind of toy within the book is this concept of front burnering your joy. And for me, I had back burnered creative writing for years because I didn't see it as something that was practical because it wasn't profitable. And I finally allowed myself to start pitching some freelance articles and essays because I was so taken with this topic of why are we all so burnt out? And once a few of those articles hit and I really saw how the zeitgeist responded and there was such a hunger to have more of this conversation, I really pursued the opportunity to write the book. So that's kind of a long story.
All of it happened at the same time.
Mhm.
And as I'm reading the book and you're sharing the story about you have your two older kids who are in school, and then you have this newborn baby.
Farm baby.
You're not taking a maternity leave. You're trying to juggle all of it and schooling from home. I don't know how you did.
I
Like,
didn't. I brought, my body broke. Here's the
broke
thing, though.
down.
The thing, though, Rachel, because I asked myself, like, why didn't I take a maternity leave? And at the time, my mindset was so skewed that I thought taking a break somehow said that, like, I was a punk, like, I couldn't handle all of the abundance and opportunities that were coming my way. You have to understand that I've built my value and my sense of self over a lifetime on my ability to push through and to tap into this extra gear that other people can't
They
necessarily
don't have it.
Exactly.
That's what I was talking to my dad actually recently. And he is also this way. And I blame him for a lot of my overworking because he was always like, when other people think it's getting hard, that's when
And
I'm just getting
yeah.
going. And I was like, Dad, do you know how damaging that has been for me over the years? Because it meant I just kept putting more and more and more on myself and never stopping to say, like, hold on, I need a break, or I have other things that I'm curious about or want to do. Like you said, our identities get so wrapped up into our ability to be productive and make a living, make a career, make a name for ourselves, that the things that seem frivolous or restful seem like a waste of time.
They do. And to be honest with you, because I had built so much of my esteem and identity around being
Yeah.
able to like kick it into that next gear, I didn't know I had a ceiling. Like I didn't know that there was a point where I would have to tap out because I had never reached it. I had always been able to be
Yeah.
like fifth gear, sixth gear, seventh gear. And during the pandemic, I reached it and I hit that wall and it was very humbling, but it was also a wake up call that like,
Yeah.
you can't keep, I think it's also tied to where you are in your life, right? You
Yeah.
can use yourself that way in your youth, but I think once you hit your 40s, especially, you start running out of road around, okay, I'll just sleep less. I'll pull an all nighter. You can't do that. Your body physically starts to rebel against you. And that's what happened to me. Like my body completely broke down. So I had,
Well, and this is what I see for so many women, especially. And we know that women have more chronic illness.
Yep.
We tend to have a lot more issues with things like chronic pain, chronic fatigue, all of these things where we're told, oh, it's just anxiety. You just need to take this pill and it'll be fine. But really, it's like our bodies are giving us signals that we've hit our max. Like we aren't machines. We need to take care of ourselves. We actually do need like water and food and sleep and all of these
Imagine
things.
that.
Imagine that. We can't just keep pushing through and ignoring our physical person and emotional person too, because I think that's the other side of the burnout is the emotional burnout that comes from it, especially when you're juggling the needs of all these other people in your life.
Absolutely. And speaking of the emotional piece, as I was interviewing people for the book, I started to notice this cycle that everyone was describing, even if they came to it at a different entry point. And after overworking on autopilot, back burning what matters, and repeatedly skipping winter, people would have this burnout breaking point, which was either they physically got sick or they lost someone. And because their schedules were so packed, they didn't have the room to stop and grieve and process that they kind of just had an emotional breakdown. And that was the point when they said, I have to do something different. So it was either a personal health crisis or the loss of
Yeah.
a loved one that sent them into a grief that they did not have room to process. And that just kind of took their burnout over the edge. Like, there's no more space or room here, and I cannot cope.
Okay, I want to come back to back burnering versus front burnering because
Yeah.
this is something that even before your book, I started to feel very intuitively that I needed to add more joy into my life and more fun and stop making everything mean something or like that I had to be productive with everything or be profiting from everything. I want you to talk about this some more because I think for some of us, this is just such a radical thing to like something because we like it.
I think that so much of this that, I share in the book, it's based on the conditioning that we have absorbed through our lifetimes, but that conditioning started way before we even got here. So much of this is hundreds of years in the making, right? But so you've got your societal norms that say this is what you do, and then you've got your familial norms, like this is how we operate and move. And then you're internalizing much of that and telling yourself what is the right course of action. And I think that, especially here in the West with capitalism, if it's not making money and if it's not producing profits, the message that we have all internalized is it's not worth our time. It doesn't matter. It should be deprioritized. So what we end up backburnering is typically our health, our hobbies, and our key relationships. So, you think about all these tired tropes of like the CEO who never sees their kids and then they retire and they don't even know their family. Like it's because they
It's
were
so real.
fed, yeah, they were fed the message and they internalized the message that the most important thing for me to do is grow this company, make more money, and satisfy the shareholders at the expense of my family, at the expense of my friends. And even me saying, it sounds crazy, but just think about how much you've probably done in some respect over your life. I mean, not taking a maternity leave is insane. I literally had my 12-year-old at the time tell me that I should take a break because he was like, being needs you.
They were, and at that part in your book is so like it makes you kind of go, oh, those babies had to come to you and say, Mom, we
But
need you to
it didn't
calm
occur to
down.
me. It didn't occur to me that a newborn needed me.
Yeah. And I think it's so easy to do that when you are ambitious and when your identity gets wrapped up in that. And that's one thing I'm very curious about, like watching in society right now, because we are seeing I think like the death rattle of hyper capitalism. People are realizing like this just doesn't work, that this doesn't work for anybody, and
Work
that
it.
all these people are saying, like, I'm so lonely. Well, yeah, when we've prioritized growth at all costs, when we prioritize capitalism over connection, people don't have friends, they don't have family, people feel like they don't have a village. It's so insidious how it has just kind of taken over our lives in so many areas. And I think the last maybe 30 years of the internet taking over everything has only accelerated that. I watched my dad growing a business in the 80s and 90s. He didn't have to check emails or have a cell phone. Like when he was home, he was home. And I think we've lost so much of that with this hyper capitalism that's made it really, really hard to see how, like, entrenched it's become in all of our society, and that's why we're working all the time. I remember when I had Mitchell, I was going into labor, and I had just got an email in about, like, an interview somebody wanted me to answer to go out in a magazine, and I was sitting there in labor in my bed typing back the response to this email because I was like, "Oh, this is a great
Great
opportunity. I need
opportunity.
to do this." Meanwhile, every few minutes, I'm like, "Ooh, okay, hold on. Let me time that one."
Right. I can't afford to take my foot off the gas. That's one of the beliefs of
Yeah,
machine mindset. Yeah.
but we can, and that's the thing that we get to, is we can take our foot off the gas.
Yeah.
The world won't collapse if we
Well,
aren't holding it up ourselves.
yeah. You said something that just like triggered this whole other thought process for me when you were talking about hyper capitalism, excuse me, and how we have been socialized to believe that we've deprioritized connection, we're lonely,
Yeah.
et cetera. And we were talking a little bit earlier about caregiving and, the crisis among seniors. And I was just reflecting on my grandmother who passed away 7 or 8 months ago at the age of 94. But she was able to stay in her home. All of her children had moved away, but she stayed in her home. She never went to a nursing home. She stayed all the way to the end. And the last year of her life, she had nurses. But prior to that, like all through her 80s and early 90s, she had a village. She had friends. She had and literally community people checking in on her, people who she taught in elementary school who would drop by. And so much of that, of her village even shifting, was just because she was outliving everyone.
Everybody.
But I think about her and how that's just unfathomable today. Like, when I think about the support that she naturally had because she grew up and lived in a different time when we had to prioritize connection and relationships for our survival,
Yeah.
and how that both ensured her security, but also the richness of her life. She had a beautiful life. Her service was beautiful. People had so many wonderful memories. And I feel like that there's something there around the way things used to be, the richness of your life, but also the support that you have where you don't necessarily fall into the crisis that we were talking about with caregiving, et cetera, because you literally, it's not just your kids. Like you have a whole community of people who are looking out for you that you've been looking out for. I remember when my grandmother used to take us and we would, grocery shop for the elderly people when she was a younger, older person, right? And that is
Exactly.
just, it's not like that anymore. And I think going back to this idea of back burnering our health, hobbies, and key relationships, like if we can bring those back into focus and to your point of front burnering
Yeah.
those health, hobbies, and relationships, that's really the answer. That's the key to all of it.
Absolutely. And I think my grandmother's the same. My grandmother's 97 and she's now in assisted living, but she lived on her own up until a couple years ago. And one thing I had a conversation with her not long ago. She's still super sharp. She was always involved in stuff.
Yep.
She, back when she was coming up and raising a family, women didn't have careers. She was stay-at-home mom, and at the same time, she was super involved in the community. She was super involved in the church. She was involved in a local women's club.
Yep.
She had some girlfriends who were girlfriends. I mean, they were girlfriends until the very end, until
Yep.
they, and they really did look out for each other.
They
And
did.
one of the things she always told me was make sure you have girlfriends, and that it's just so important to have women in your life. And there was a season really for me, probably from when I had the twins in 2010 until about 2020, when I didn't prioritize that at all. I was around women all the time because I work with women, so I'm
Yep.
talking to women, but I didn't have like people I did life with, you know? And there's a difference there, I think, when we're talking about key relationships. You know, I have my sisters, I have my husband, I have my parents and my in-laws and things like that. But sometimes you just need friends who you can cry or you can laugh or
Rant.
whatever. Yeah, rant, just completely vent and dump your bucket. And that has been a huge thing for me in my 40s now, has been prioritizing those relationships. I'm like, I want to have my own version of the Golden Girls now. Like, who are the girls that we're going to grow old together and be like, hey, let's go to this concert, or do you want to go to this event with me? Or, you know, let's go sailing. We did that about a month ago. We were like, let's go sailing for the day. Let's just do it and have a fun experience.
Yeah.
And it takes work to find those people. It takes effort. And is there a business payoff for it? No, y'all. Stop thinking your key relationships need to be tied to your
I would
business or your
argue, I
business
would
network.
argue. I think no, but yes, I think if you are centered and joyful and happy
Yeah.
and whole, that's always beneficial to your business. That's always beneficial to your bottom line. But ultimately, I again, yes, to your point, it's like, why are we using that as the only metric for if something is worth our time or
I think that's what I got in that trap for like a good solid decade of, is it worth me going to this event? Not because I'll meet some great people and make some friends. It was more like, who am I networking with? Am I going to connect with potential clients? Am I going to connect with referral partners? And kind of letting go of a lot of that has really freed me up to like people because I like them, because I find them interesting and I think they're great, or try out hobbies just because I'm curious and want to try it, you know?
yeah. I love that. I would love your tips because frankly, as I talk about this concept and people say, well, I'm so exhausted and I can't slow my mind down to even try to get rest. And I'm like, well, you've got to build up a new muscle memory because your muscle memory is to overwork yourself and to not be
Yeah.
able to rest. And I think it's a similar thing when you talk about building connections. For me, I think it's a mixture of what you said of like, how do I make sure this is going to benefit my business or revenue, et cetera, because I need business to be working. But also, life is a lot and I'm tired. And so it's like, you know,
Yeah.
that's not always something that I'm reaching for in terms of, all right, I'm tired. I've got to get dinner on the table. I've got to take the kids to their activities. I've got to handle the things for the business. Oh, yes, I need to go be social. That's not always something I reach for, but I'm realizing that that's a muscle memory that I need to develop,
It
a
is.
stronger one, right? Where I'm seeing the social output as, okay, this is filling my cup. This is watering me and this is helping me to grow and to thrive. And so if whatever tips you have for developing muscle memory to be more social,
I'll say I let
yeah,
my curiosity and like hobbies and interests be the entry point for that, because I think people are craving community so badly, and it's so easy to be like, I'll just pick up a book or I'll just watch something online about how to do this thing. But I've started going to in-person things. So a great example, here in Richmond, I have a friend who has a beautiful gathering space she calls the Yellow House, and she started hosting events there. She bought this house, and it's part her photography studio, but the other part of it is like an art gallery for queer and femme artists, and she hosts events. She brings in different artists all the time. There's always networking events happening, and so I was just like, I'm just going to keep showing up. And literally just every month I try to go there for at least one thing, and I always meet someone new. And then in January, I met someone who's an astrologer locally here in Richmond, And I went to a workshop she taught in January and I was like, I love this. And so I've been to every single monthly workshop she's done just because it's been interesting. And so many cool people have shown up at that workshop. And I've gotten to know several of them even more and started to build those relationships more. So for me, it's just been like, what am I curious about that I haven't prioritized? And how can I just keep saying yes to that? So that the astrology workshop has been really fun. I just went to another one on Sunday and I just love going to them now. And I've become a really good friend with Verena, who's the astrologist. And I think that's part of it is like making friends when you're younger is
Mhm.
kind of like, hey, we're sitting together at the lunch table and I see you every single day. So we're eventually going to become friends. You kind of have to recreate that as an adult and show up consistently
Mhm.
often enough so that you get to know people.
What is her name? I'm thinking of a woman and I'm like, I'm looking to see if I can see her book. But there's a woman who writes books about friendship and she talks about how you have to have proximity, positivity, and there's like one more P. It's like basically
Yes.
you got frequency. So like that's
Yeah.
what you just described of it's easy to make friends in school because you show up to school every
Right there.
day. They're there, they're close to you, and hopefully you have these positive interactions. Shauna. I'm gonna think of her name and send it to you, but she's got
Okay.
one friendships don't just happen. That's one of the
No.
books. And the other one I can't remember. But great, great scholarship on making friends in our middle age years.
I also think there's something about being out of the middle of having really little kids. I just always felt like the odd one out because I was starting this business and everyone else was just so completely
Same.
on an opposite path than me. So that I was kind of the weird one starting
Did you
this
feel like
business.
you were young for your like a younger mom? Like when
Yeah,
I talk
especially with the twins
yes,
too, because everybody in the twin mom groups I went to were like 10 or 15 years older than me.
same. Yeah.
Yeah, I was 27 when I had the twins. So
Hey,
I was kind of
yep.
like odd duck in that world and I couldn't really find my people.
And then you're not working in an organization, you've got this business and you're on,
Yeah.
online and they're like, "What?"
But I think once I committed to, especially after the pandemic, I was like, I've got to get in person and meet some people.
Yeah.
Because I was craving community, I was craving having friends. And so it was kind of putting myself out there. But I'll also say I basically proposed to some of my friends.
Ooh.
I literally, my friend Michelle was hosting these 1 day long retreats at her house in Irvington, Virginia, and they were just like literally like spiritual growth, resting type of retreats. But as soon as she said she was launching them, I signed up right away. And I was like, when she asked, why are you all here? And I literally looked at her. I was like, Michelle, I'm here because I want to be one of your best friends. And I think we're supposed to be best friends. And
I love
I'm just like, you know what? What if we were all brave enough to be like, I don't know what it is about you, lady, but
like
I
it.
like you're my person. Like, I think we're on the same wavelength here. And so I've told a couple people that I kind of proposed to my best friends. It was like, I don't know what it is about you, but I think we're supposed to be really good friends in each other's lives.
I love that, Rachel. And that's the thing. It's like the courage to be vulnerable enough to
Yeah.
admit what it is that you're hungry for and to make that overture. Like that's the hardest part. So I guess
Oh
that's
yeah, she could have totally been like, this Rachel girl's a little intense,
right.
but luckily she was
Shasta
like, oh,
Nelson.
me too.
That's the lady's name, Shasta Nelson. It came.
Yes.
So if anyone's listening and they're like, friendship, go check out Shasta's resources. She's awesome.
Well, I think that's a huge component of recovering from burnout on my personal front has been layering that in because I started bringing in taking care of my health. I started bringing in hobbies and joy, but it really was having other people who can like hold you, and be that emotional support system, especially when you're
Especially
going
when
through
you
hard
do
stuff.
that. But also, especially because like we hold people for work.
Yes.
And so it's
That's
kind of like you need someone to hold you too, someone that you can ask for advice, someone who can counsel you and support you and be your cheerleader. Like, that's what I'm
Absolutely.
always saying. Like, I be a cheerleader. I can't be the only one who's always like, come on, you can do it. I need to be reminded of that too sometimes.
I think we all need that so deeply. And it feels like it takes so much work, but I've found that it's been such a huge payoff and it's
Absolutely.
made everything else so much better. I think it's expanded my capacity for handling the challenges like that I'm handling now, caregiving for my parents. I think because I have that emotional support system, because I can go hire help, but having that emotional support system when I can be like, oh my God, my mom did this and it just totally wrecked me,
Mm,
that's invaluable to me. And I think that's what also that emotional burnout part has probably been the harder thing to learn to navigate and to
mm.
get more support around.
Yeah. And I think you tell me if you think this is true. Like, we can muscle through so many of these decades. But, like, I'm telling you something about these 40s, it all comes to a head. It's like all your bad habits finally catch up with you, whether that is ignoring your health or ignoring your need for community and emotional support. Like, you get to a point where you can't ignore that you are lonely and that you do need people to talk to and confide in. I feel like it's a lot easier in your 20s and 30s to just kind of back burner and ignore, but there's just something cumulative happening that once you hit like mid 40s, there's a limit where it's like, I can't operate like this anymore. It's unsustainable.
Well, and I think this is where we're finally at the stage maybe where we stop caring so much about what we are supposed to do or about what society told us we're supposed to do or what ambition looks like or what success looks like. I feel like when you stop letting that drive the bus and stop being like, well, success means I can grind it out 60, 80 hours a week. I think you have to be willing to let go of all of that in order to figure out what really works for you.
And to get real and to get honest, if you really want to have a good life. Like, if it's like, okay, I really want the rest of the time that I'm here on earth to work for me, then I've got to get real and get honest about what I need.
And I think in some way too, I know you just lost your grandmother. I just lost a cousin at the end of September and she died right before her 30th birthday. So she was
Oh,
much younger than me. And
I'm so
things like
sorry.
that were such a wake up call for me because my cousin Holly was somebody who lived life to the fullest every day and really went after her passions and hobbies and was successful in a very like not in a super ambitious way like I had kind of been on that path. She was a special needs teacher and grew flowers and loved going hiking and just always had amazing friends and had an interests in a very full beautiful life. And so I've had a couple moments like that where between losing Holly and other things that have happened over the last few years, it's just been like, I want a full, beautiful life. I don't
Yeah.
want a full, exhausting life. If I'm saying exhausted every single day, what am I
Something's
doing?
wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree. And I mean, at my grandmother's service, that was something that I literally was like, okay, I need to make some changes because I don't know if there would be dozens of people lining up to say how I helped them or was always there for them or we raised our kids together or, I remember there were women who were friends with my aunt who just reminisced on how my grandmother had been like a second mother to them. And I'm just
That's
like,
amazing.
what? Like, that's
Yeah.
what I want. That's what I want to be remembered for, like showing up to your graduation or baking the cake to celebrate your milestone and feeling like Auntie Manda was there for me and she cared about me and I was important to her. Like that, I want more of that. And so her service just it shined a spotlight on some of the gaps.
Huge. I love that we both shared those things because, gosh, we've had such a great conversation, Amanda. This has been so good. And I hope this really lands for anyone who's listening because I know there's so much out there about burnout right now. Like it's been a big topic, especially in the world of women and work for a long time, or for at least the last few years. But I feel like so much of it has gone into, if only you can learn this time management system, you won't be
Yeah.
burned out. And I'm like, no, you guys are missing the point. We're not supposed to just only be valued for what we can produce and what we can do. We're valuable inherently, and we're meant to have these beautiful, wonderful lives where we really are fully self expressed, whether it's through our interests and our hobbies and how we raise our families and the people we surround ourselves with. I think if we can have more of that, our society would be in such a better place.
So much better place. And I hope, really do hope that one of the takeaways that people get from this book is that we really do have to change the measuring stick that we are
Yeah.
using to judge our success. Like you said, we're not simply put here on earth to produce. And I think once we can start to acknowledge and internalize that and then move to I am worthy,
Yeah.
having relationships, joy, having time for my hobbies, those are worthy expenditures of my time and life force. Like it's a lot simpler than I think we make it. It's not about productivity. It's about getting back in touch with those very basic human desires and aspects of your humanity that we're taught to ignore and deprioritize in favor of productivity and profit. And if we just move back to relationships, the things that light me up, my hobbies, and being healthy, that's like 95% of the solution.
Agreed. 1,000%. Well, Amanda, where can people find more about you and all of the amazing work you do? In addition to the writing and the book, The Rest Revolution, you also do incredible coaching work. Can you share a little bit about where people can learn more about you?
You can find my website at my name, amandamillerlittlejohn.com. But like I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you are active on LinkedIn as well, come over there, chat with me, friend me, DM me, jump in the
Yes.
comments. As far as the Rest Revolution, it has its own site, which is the restrevolutionbook.com. And you can find that book in all major retailers.
Anywhere.
Yeah, anywhere you're looking for it. It should be there. And there's also an audio version. I didn't read it, unfortunately, but it's still good. So if you're an audiobook person, it's on Audible as well.
I love it. Well, I highly recommend grabbing a copy of this book. I think it was one of the best I've read about burnout and about how to actually recalibrate and turn things around in a more sustainable, like life-giving way. I highly, highly recommend this book to everyone. 5 stars all the way. So thank you, Amanda, so much for joining me today here. It's been so much fun to connect with you again and to catch up and to chat. I can't wait to hear what else you're working on in terms of more writing and more books in the future.
Thank you, Rachel.